Hey folks, I'm Helix and you join me once again with another World of Warcraft video. Following on from my last video where I spoke about how some key things within the game once were and how I personally thought they should be, or at least changes that may aid in the continued development of the game, I thought I'd jump to the expansion and join the hype train. So I'm just pretty much going to go through my thoughts and theories as to what is coming next with World of Warcraft, kind of based on the data mined items that have been found so far, and using the other theories out there to try and nail down what I truly believe will be the case. Okay, to start with, we have the disappearance of Jaina Proudmoore. Now this happened quite early on in the Legion expansion. Jaina quite noticeably left Dalaran because she was a little bit annoyed that the Horde had been re-included and allowed back into Dalaran, and she just really didn't agree with this. And today, nobody's sure where she's gone. However, some of the data mined items kind of directly influence our thoughts as to where she may have gone. This takes us to a set of data mined armor that was found in July of the year, and it's entitled Kiltaras Quest Armor. Jaina is of course a descendant of Kiltaras as a nation and its rulers, so the likelihood is that's where she's gone. How we'll find her and what sort of dealings we have with her are still unclear, but I personally feel that the prediction and the speculation as to the main content of the next expansion is spot on, and we'll get to that. So I actually do think we'll be aiding Jaina, and with the Alliance directly in aid and the Horde in aid, but also gaining, or at least regaining, an element of some trust with her. There has been speculation that the quest armor could be for a reward to a Chromie style scenario, but given the look, I wouldn't completely rule out it being a starter set of armor. Usually we see armor sets on pre-expansion events. We saw that in Wrath of Lich King is one that jumps straight to mind, but we also see armor sets for new classes. And yes, Blizzard do have a standard release race class system, but Pandaria broke that rule with a class and a race, and in Draenor we didn't see anything. So it's not completely out of the question that Blizzard may have thrown a spanner into the works and may release yet another class straight after Legion. What this class might be, or even if it is such a thing, I'm not going to speculate. There could be any number of things. I don't think it's going to happen, but there is the opportunity there, and with a set of armor entitled in such a way, it would directly point towards that in my mind, but I could be wrong. It is more likely the case that the armor is going to be a pre-event, and that we are perhaps going to have to go to Kiltaras in aid of Jaina to help defend against the enemies that are going to be the main aspect of the next expansion. With the armor aside, I think it's pretty clear though that we are going to be making some form of visit to Kiltaras, so at least that's a form of zone that we will most likely be visiting. Whether or not it's a zone that we'll be making regular visits to, or whether it'll just be a starter zone, an introduction, and then we won't go there again, sort of like the Gilneas aspect to the game. Again, I'm not sure. I feel we probably will just be making a flying visit and that will be it, possibly in a scenario form, but we'll have to wait and see. But the likelihood is pretty high that we will be meeting Jaina, we'll be meeting the Kultaras nation finally, and making avenues with them. Moving on to potential main baddies for the expansion. There's a lot of speculation, and I'm going to agree with it here, that the old gods are going to be the emphasis to the expansion. There are data mined items that directly point towards that, and one of our zones, our beloved zones, is going to be affected, and I think that the zone that they've chosen is ideal to point towards an old god expansion. I am of course referring to Silithus, which is damaged at the end of Legion. If you don't want to know any more than that, please stop watching now. I'm going to go into some pretty spoilerific territory now. Okay, so in patch 7.3.2 on the PTR, it adds a Silithus the Wound. Now, this could be a scenario much in the way as we did the Cataclysm scenarios and dungeons, but I don't think it is. From the information that we have, it looks like Azeroth itself is going to be wounded, and Silithus is going to be where the wound takes place. The map is entitled Silithus Phased 01, so it is possible there will be a non-phased version. Whether or not that's the actual zone before the wound takes place, so anyone that's before the next expansion won't see the wound. We'll have to wait and see with this, but I think that's maybe the way it's going to go. There is, however, audio to go with the wound map in Silithus, and it comes from Khadgar himself. And he says, the Legion is defeated, its master imprisoned. But in his final spiteful act, Sargeras may have doomed us all. Our world is wounded, champion. Its life essence seeps out into the sands, just like Magni foresaw. This mere drop of Argus blood surges with incredible power, the might of a titan. If the blood of Azeroth also proves to be the source of such power, those who seek to rule the world will stop at nothing to possess it. The days ahead may be dark indeed. For now, go to Silithus, gaze upon the wound in the world with your own eyes. We will find a way to save Azeroth, I know it. So could this be our entry point into the expansion? I believe it could well be. It is entirely possible that in the depths below Silithus there's a old god influence, a presence awaiting us, potentially in a deep home styled zone. And of course, Silithus is notorious for having an insectoid presence, a large cultist presence, and of course AQ 20 and 40, which has old god elements to them. So be ready for a large amount of insectoid mobs to fight in the next expansion. I think that's pretty obvious that if Silithus is absolutely kind of swarming with insects and they look like they're erupting from the ground in some places, that we are going to be fighting them. But I do believe that there's going to be old god elements underneath in the similar format to Deep Home. We may be fighting corrupted old god style elements and mobs. If this is the case and we are battling the old gods and their minions, then we could also be visiting the Eye of the Maelstrom to battle N'Zoth, and we could also then visit Nazjatar as a zone, being pretty close, or being the area where he's contained. So then this also ties in with the speculation that we are going to be battling in the South Seas or having a sea-themed expansion. I think this is a kind of a handshake between the two. We'll be visiting the high seas and we'll be visiting old god areas. Having spent some time to read through speculations on the various forums available to us through battle.net, I've found some interesting items and areas being suggested on the US realm forums. But one item especially arose through my trolling, and it was released by a player who goes by the name of Puza. And the post is apparently an email leak from the Blizzard Irvine offices. So I personally don't think there was a leak. I think this is just an item of fiction, but it does have a lot of interesting points and tie-ins to some of the stuff that wasn't found until much later. Puza goes on to write that the expansion is going to be called Rise of the Naga Empire, and our main villains are going to be Queen Azshara and N'Zoth. Of course, we did meet Queen Azshara in Legion, so that's easy enough to predict. N'Zoth, not so easy to predict, a good speculation, and that's one that we've all been kind of led towards anyway with the introduction of or at least the finding of the Silithus map. The plot apparently will be that the Burning Legion has divided the attention of the heroes of Azeroth away from their homelands. As the war wages on Argus to stop the Legion, Azshara continues her preparations in carrying out the will of N'Zoth by readying an invasion that will cover every continent on the planet. The Naga Empire has been building its forces and patiently waiting for the perfect time to strike. Using a twisted form of black magic, and power granted to her by N'Zoth, Azshara will carry out a ritual that will cause the submerged Naga Empire to rise from the depths. Both the Horde and the Alliance are unprepared for such an attack, and as a result, many iconic locations will be destroyed. In order to defend the lands the factions of Azeroth hold dear, both major factions must band together even amid the hatred both feel for each other. It then goes on to say that the inventions created by the gnomes and adopted by the goblins will be created and refined to help curtail the invading Naga. Gifted and mechanically intelligent gnomes and goblins will pilot massive suits of armor and will be instrumental in holding off the Naga invasion. These tinkerers will be looked at by the rest of the Horde and the Alliance as essential to the military efforts and will greatly help turn the tide of battle. Now, given that this was last edited in May, I think if it is fiction, it's pretty good at taking a stab at what the expansion is going to be. Going back to my earlier point that there may be a new class, this could be the case. I don't feel, however, that the Tinkerer will be a class that they will ever introduce, but again, I could be wrong on both fronts. There could be a class, there may not be a class. It could be the Tinkerer, in which goblins and gnomes do have a choice in, but then it may not be. The apparent leak email also says that the level cap raise will be to 120. That's easy enough to predict. We think that's going to be the case anyway, being that we're 110 and 10 levels is usually a good figure to go up by. And that there will be a new race, which will be the Naga, and it will be neutral. So like the Pandair, it will be able to join the Horde and the Alliance. Again, I don't think this is real. There's been some videos made by other YouTubers in which they've looked at the potential for the Naga becoming a playable race, and the effort it would take for Blizzard to change the armor looks and feels and make it work with Naga not having any legs. I think that would be too much effort, so this won't be real. It's completely made up. New mount types are also apparently a thing, being boats. With the help of the goblins and the gnomes, players will be able to create their own boat in the initial leveling stage of the expansion. Faster boats will be able to be found as mount drops off bosses. Race-specific houseboats will be able to be created and customized by players. Now, in my last video, I did say that this would be a good suggestion. My thoughts at the time were not influenced by this at all. I didn't know this email leak or supposed email leak existed until earlier today. I still believe that there will be boats, but I don't believe they're going to be customizable or have any main effect other than transportation. Finally, they have a pipe dream of a system in which they say it's a faction allegiance system, allowing Horde and Alliance players to undergo a series of quests and events that eventually allow them to group together, unlocks account wide. For anyone that played vanilla in the early stage, they're going to know that this isn't going to work. It's not going to be possible. The Alliance and the Horde used to be able to talk to each other, and the salt was real between them. I don't think this is going to happen. I think it's a complete pipe dream. Looking back through the email, they also suggest that leveling zones will be the Sinatal Reef, the Kiltaras, Isle of Kazan, Zandalar, Telebim, Drowned Reaches, the Gishan Caverns, and Najatar will be the max level zones. These are all potentials, and I do think that we may see Telebim, the Isle of Kazan, and Kiltaras. The others I'm not sure on. It could point towards more of a South Sea vibe again. We'll have to wait and see. And 3 new raid zones available at launch and 12 dungeons available at launch. 10 new, 2 being refreshed previous expansion dungeons. Again, we'll see a lot of dungeons and maybe 1 or 2 raids, but I don't think we're going to see that many at launch. Now, this was all apparently leaked and available from Reddit. I'm not the biggest fan of Reddit. I actually don't really like Reddit all that much. I just see it as a dumping ground for a lot of rubbish like this. But as much as I do think that the supposed leak is rubbish, I think that there is a lot of good points to it. I think there's been some good fictional writing here. I do think we will see some of these items in the expansion. So in summary, looking back through what I've said already, I think that we will be visiting Jaina Proudmoore, or she will be requesting the aid of the Horde and the Alliance to help her home nation of Kiltaras. Whether or not we are helping to defend it against a old god invasion, this could be the case, but I definitely think we're going to be making a quick drop into Kiltaras and reintroducing ourselves to Jaina Proudmoore. Main focus wise, I do believe that the old gods are going to be the main baddies to the expansion, that with the wound caused by Sargeras in Silithus, that we will be delving deep into Azeroth and battling the old god types of minions and eventually the old gods themselves in raids. Of course, the likelihood of us finding out about an expansion is quite high, with BlizzCon arriving in the next 6 to 8 weeks. I'm not quite sure on the actual date, but it's sometime soon. The schedule has been announced, and World of Warcraft is first on the main stage. It has a full hour. Yes, Overwatch also has a full hour, but none of the other Blizzard games do. I think that this is a perfect time for them to release, or at least get the hype for the whole of BlizzCon, the whole of World of Warcraft going, because we also then see later in the day a systems deep dive into World of Warcraft. No other game has this, so why would it be the case other than an expansion? But for now, I'm going to leave that with you to mull over, to think about, to comment, and also speculate yourselves. If you do have any comments, feel free to make them. I will read them, and I'll hopefully be able to make more videos looking at possible introductions to an expansion before they announce it. If not, I'll be holding my breath as to what an expansion is going to be and if there is going to be one at all. Until then, however, stay safe and keep gaming.